Welcome to the Beauty of Better podcast, where we help moms thrive in health and faith.
Welcome back, mamas. We're excited to talk to you today about cardio, how much you should be doing, and kind of breaking down some of these principles. Today, we're going to talk about frequency of how many times per week, intensity, linking that to heart rate, how long even those sessions should be, and really what that's going to look like, and the diversity that's out there and the beauty in that. And then just kind of what activities that you could even picking from. So there's a lot out there, a lot of good. And picking things that you enjoy is really what's going to keep you on this train of adhering to having some cardio. Like, Kelsey, do you want to kick us off maybe defining cardio and why this is
Yeah.
important for us?
Yeah. So cardio is really anything that's using your heart for an extended period of time, right? So we're doing an activity for like over and over and over again for a longer duration of time. So the more scientific term for that is aerobic. It means like your muscles are using oxygen for energy, but you may or may not be interested in that, so that's fine. But um, so when we're doing something over a longer period of time without stopping, that's considered more aerobic. And if we're doing that without stopping, um, what did we say we're talking about first? Frequency? How much should we be
Mhm.
doing that per week? So this is per week. Um, Really anywhere from 2 to 5 days per week. And if you hear that two and you're like, oh, I don't even know if I could do two. Great. Okay, do one. Like
Mhm.
ideally we're doing 2 to 5, but obviously one is better than zero. So with
Mhm.
that in mind,
And
yes.
I think with that too, another way we can talk about it, there's exercise and physical activity, right? Physical activity is just that movement that we do to get through our days, whether it's walking up the stairs or, into an office or whatnot, vacuuming, gardening. But this is something that's a little bit more intense. So we're kind of leveling up our heart rate a little bit with this. So another way to think about like a goal with frequency could be a minute range of like 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity a week. That's another way sometimes it's talked about when we talk about cardio as well. So if that's an easier number for you to tabulate, I know on my Fitbit watch, that's the one that it's like, oh, you've hit your target for the week. It's not saying, oh, you went to the gym once or twice or 5 times. So that's just another way that might be helpful for you. Moderate's just walking. So vigorous, we're going to lead into intensity next. So intensity, heart
Hold
rate is
on.
going to
Can I
be,
ask a question before we
yeah,
jump
go
into
for it.
intensity?
Yeah.
So, talking about minutes, right? And so, like, we can look at this as days or as minutes, right?
Hmm.
And when we're doing that, what if somebody has like 10 minutes here, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes here? Do you recommend that? Do you not recommend that? Like, what's the minimum amount of time? Like, if somebody's trying to piece together, like thinking of like all of us working, right? Where it's like, oh, I might have 10 minutes to hop on my elliptical in the morning, 10 at lunch, and 10 in the evening. Is that okay? Or is it better to have it all at once?
So it's 30 minutes is kind of your goal per day to have. But depending on where your fitness level is at, where everybody's starting at a different point, and there's a lot of different background and reasons behind that, you can break it into as small as 10-minute chunks is really what American College of Sports Medicine, the research and science behind that would say is like 3 10-minute chunks are better than zero. And if you have to subdivide it even more, like the goal is knowing where you're starting and trying to go from there. So, like, if you're winded just after 10 minutes, then that's more reasonable to break it into those chunks. Or if that's just what you have the feasibility to do in the day, that's definitely acceptable.
Yes, for sure. So if we're going to talk about intensity, right? So if we're talking about intensity with cardio, that's basically like how high is your heart rate? Like how hard are we working? And we can really basically, if your heart rate is higher, the exercise itself is considered to be more intense. If it's lower, it's less intense. If it's higher, you can't do it for as long, right? Because it's a higher intensity exercise. Now, people who are really conditioned really well, they can do that higher intensity exercise for a lot longer than somebody who's untrained or not conditioned at all. Um, but generally speaking, higher your heart rate is, you're not going to be able to maintain that as long. If your heart rate is lower, you can probably do that for much longer. So if you're looking at that like 20 to 60-minute range where you're going to try to figure out how long you should do it, again, we want to take where you're at and go like, let's go a step up from there. So if, walking for 20 minutes on an incline, is getting your heart rate up pretty high, that's probably just fine, to start with. And if walking for 20 minutes on an incline does not get your heart rate up really high, then maybe we need to increase to a jog or a run, or, you can pick different modes of exercise, but picking something where you're taking what your heart rate can do right now and then just going a little bit higher, would probably be my recommendation for like where to start. If you've never done this before, we don't want to like go to the highest intensity
Mhm.
possible. Your heart's not conditioned to do that, and um, it's probably not as safe as doing something for, again, it's kind of like what we talked about in the last episode where we're talking about like it's better to start with a lighter weight and do it for more reps so you can get more practice doing that. Same thing for cardio. Like if you haven't done much of it, it's probably better to start with a lower intensity and do it for like, whatever long is for you. Like 20 minutes might be long for you, 40 minutes might be long for you. Um, but somewhere in that 20 to 60-minute range is ideal. Again, if you can only do 10, then do 10. That's fine. So, does that make sense? Do
Yeah.
we
I
have
had a
questions on that?
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did have a question. How do you know when um it is maybe too much? Can you notice signs in your body like maybe post workout like, oh, I really shouldn't, because you see those videos where people like feel like they need to walk like an hour every day on the treadmill in order to like burn fat or something. But but maybe they're overexerting themselves or feeling like they need to go 90 minutes on the treadmill. Like, what is too much? And how can you know for yourself, like, what signs in your own body, like, okay, I'm overexerting and actually working against my body and my health by doing too much?
It's a great question. Um, we will probably, well, we will definitely have more information on this, in our subscription packages on our website in the future. If you're like, I want something that's like made specific for me and I need to figure out how to find that number and like how to go up from there and down from there. But I would say in general, too much. I'm trying to think. So based on where you're starting, let's say you can walk for 20 minutes and you don't get winded from that. So I think where we can tell if it's too much is based on how you recover from it
Mhm.
partially. So if your heart rate is able to return to close to 100 beats per minute, really anywhere from like 100 to 120 within a couple minutes of you finishing, then you're probably recovering well from what you're doing. If it's taking you like 4, 5, 6+ minutes to get your heart rate back down close to that 100 number, then we know that like whatever you did was probably too much. Christiana, I don't know if you have anything that you want to toss in there.
Yeah, I think just to address the other part of her question, I think that the heart rate and the number is like the lie detector test, right? Like where your heart rate is going, the speed of the recovery. There's a lot more we could really unpack with that, but we'll kind of save that for um other areas. But or other parts of our platform that we have. But another thing to know is just like how is your recovery with between the days of a session? Let's say someone's training at, I know someone training for a marathon or half marathon, and so just different sorenesses, injury, weakness, tiredness. that was abnormal. So you almost feel like you're plateauing or going backwards. That can be some signs of overtraining. But there's a lot more that we could dig into with overtraining, overreaching, and what part of the nervous system is being affected and how long that lasts. But it's a little too much to cover today. But just if you're noticing that you're plateauing or going down and that recovery period is taking longer, that's kind of your initial kind of signs for that. And I would say, finding something that's easy to measure heart rate, you can do it manually, but I just find that a Fitbit watch is my go-to when I'm exercising, just to know, like, gosh, this feels really hard right now. Like, oh yeah, my heart rate is close to what a max would be for me. Just if you're curious, max is 220 minus your age. So if you're like, oh, I'm close to my ceiling for my age, this is hard. If you're closer to 60% of that max, this isn't the detailed math necessarily, but 60%, that's, kind of the low end of what's considered vigorous, right? If you're below that 60%, then we're probably talking just the walking level moderate, right? So we said moderate to vigorous physical activity before. So, and, as Kelsey was mentioning, the duration, as the longer you go, let's say you go for 60 minutes, there's no way your heart rate's going to be able to stay at close to your max. It's going to have that inverse relationship. So as your duration goes up, your heart rate's going to be going down and vice versa. So you're going to want variety in your exercise sessions within the week, so you don't tend to lead to overtraining. You don't want every session to be the same route around your neighborhood that's 60 minutes at the same pace. We want adaptations. That's our goal. Like, we're trying to get our heart and our lungs to adapt. So, and we also want to prevent overreaching and overtraining. So having intervals were my favorite way to get back in shape after having my kids, because you go to this period where you have a kid, you're adjusting, they're little, and you're not sleeping much, and maybe exercise patterns changed during pregnancy, that you weren't able to have the same cardio routine that you did previously, doing intervals of those short bursts of higher intense and then like going down to moderate, and my heart rate would be fluctuating through that. So it's going down to lower levels for maybe 2 minutes, and then it's going back and peaking at higher levels for 2 minutes. And changing that was what caused one of the greatest results for me getting back into the rhythm of having cardio as just a regular part of my life.
I can attest to that actually myself too, because, I grew up, I was a long distance runner. I ran in college and everything, but I actually found after having kids, that's when I started doing HIIT workouts. And I did find like the best results in my body shape and everything. Like, even in all those years of doing long distance running, like my tone definition and everything. And it must be having to do with that fluctuation in your heart rate and stuff, and also incorporating resistance in there with some weights and stuff. But I can tag along with you on that and say any mamas maybe looking to get back in shape after babies, that's at least helped me in doing those HIIT workouts. But that was really, really helpful advice from both of you ladies. I did have a question. Oh, sorry. I did have a question on so you were talking about, how they set a lot of the watches nowadays to get like 10,000 steps. And that was based on kind of a big study, wasn't it? And I was just wondering, what is, just think of, your average woman, she just wants to be fit and healthy. She doesn't want to run marathons or, necessarily that, but she just wants everyday health. So do you recommend that like kind of standard of 10,000 steps a day, and then incorporating the, like, we talked in our previous podcast about weight training. Would you guys recommend that as kind of a baseline to work towards?
Yeah, so that's physical activity. So that's probably going to be below that 60% heart rate that we were talking about if we're setting walking as our goal. And some people, that's where you're starting at. Maybe you're normal, you have a sedentary job and just a lot of responsibilities, and your steps per day is 3,000 or something. Going up to 5,000 would be a jump for you, right? That would be almost double. So you really, before you add in cardio, we need to assess where are you at for physical activity. So that 10,000 is still very scientifically proven and a good benchmark to shoot for as a goal. But not every American is getting that. Not every person is getting that. There's a lot of things that cause sedentary. So thinking even, for every 60 minutes I spend sitting, I'm going to spend 5 to 10 minutes to get up and walk around and move. that can add more steps to your day. We do have an episode that talks a little bit more about physical activity that you can reference. But yes, that's good, but that is the moderate side. So what we're kind of focusing on today is let's get that heart rate up to that 60% of that max and really train the heart and lungs in a way that isn't fully, like to the greatest extent, addressed with physical activity alone. It is tapped into, but not to the same extent that pushing your heart into these higher levels does.
Yeah, and I just wanted to emphasize what Christiana said earlier in case you missed it. She said that 220 minus your age is that's your estimated max heart rate. So like if you were working as hard as you could for as long as you could and somebody was testing you on that, that would be like the highest that your heart rate would ever get. And that number is just an estimate, right? Sometimes if you do that actual test, the number might be slightly different, and that's just based on everybody's own unique physiology. But um, let's say you're 35, right? So 220 minus 35 is 185. So your predicted max would be 185. So let's say you wanted to work at 60% of that. 60% times 185 is it's 111. Okay. So like around 110 beats per minute. So maybe you start and you're doing something for 20 to 30 minutes and you're just trying to hit 110 beats per minute. Um, and that's a good place to start, right? There's lots of different types, different modes that we can use. So one of my favorites right now is the rowing machine and the bike. I got into exercise with running in high school, but I actually prefer the rower and the bike right now. So you can do lots of different types of exercise, different modes. So things like, maybe walking on an incline or even like walking with, I feel like it's pretty popular right now. It's just, trendy, like certain things just become trends and then everybody does them and great. Okay, some people that's really sustainable for you and some people it's not. You don't have to do this. But wearing a weight vest that's like 10% of your body weight to start. It's called rucking and it can get your heart rate up quite a bit higher than just walking with your body weight. And then it's also not as high of an impact on your joints as something like running. And we all know that when you run, your heart rate's going to get higher than when you walk, but maybe you just want to walk. So, you could wear, if you wanted to do that and that sounds fun to you and you actually like want to maintain that, great. If you think that sounds miserable, don't do that. Like you don't have to do it just because it's popular. You could do if you prefer biking or if you prefer getting on the stair climber or
I was
what
just
else?
gonna say a lot of those machines too, or like I love my elliptical. That's like
Yeah,
my
the
stress
elliptical. That's
relief and then
yes.
like putting resistance on it. But a lot of those machines, like if you're using a machine, it'll tell you your heartbeat. Like if
Mhm.
you like hang on to the portion of it that does that. So it's like that gives you your target heart rate or your max. So those are just extra resources that can help with that as well.
And I think variety is the spice, right? Like just like when you season your food, you don't put the same seasoning on each day. So when we're picking a mode or even duration or even intensity, like you want to have some variety. That's what's going to keep you interested. Or at least I don't even like to go the same route if I'm walking or running. Like I have to switch it up. But yeah, cycling has been my go-to. I actually like to do a 5:30 a.m. cycle class 3 days a week, sometimes four, just depending on what my calendar holds that week. But find something that you love. And then I think another thing we wanted to just address and touch on is that there's some activities out there that people choose to do that have a hybrid cardio nature. So they might have something called anaerobic training. So just to go back to cardio, what that means, it's continuous rhythmic movement of large muscle groups over an extended period of time. So there's almost a pattern of synchronicity. So like swimming, you can see the pattern. If you slice your body down the center, just like a butterfly's wings, you would see the pattern in the movement, just like walking, elliptical, biking, all these things. Those are ways to be, oh, this is true or pure cardio. But Kelsey, do you want to touch on some of those hybrid versions?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually really love the hybrids. That's like one of my favorite things to do. I would much rather do short bursts of different things because I just feel like it's a little bit more fun. So you could do, if you prefer, doing like a circuit of a few different things in a row. So like sometimes I'll row 500 meters and then I'll hop on the bike and I'll do like 1 minute on the bike. And then I'll use, this is like a little bit of a newer machine, but like a ski erg where it almost looks like you're cross country skiing and you're like pulling the handles down. And then maybe I'll do that for a minute and then I'll go back to the rower and, there's some little bits of rest in there, but because I'm changing the machine, you can kind of do it at a little bit faster or higher heart rate than you would be able to do if you were just doing like one thing for an extended, like Christiana said, larger muscle groups, extended period of time, continuous movement. So that's one example. There's many ways that you could adjust that to make it work for you and just have varying intensities of things, right? Maybe it's like going on a run and you like sprint to the tree and then you jog a little bit and then you find another thing that you want to sprint to and then you sprint to that and then you jog for a little bit. So there's lots of ways to make cardio fun, even if it's not like pure aerobic exercise. There's lots of other ways to make it fun too. So I always like to think of, doing something. If you do something once a week that's like faster, then you should also do something once a week that's slower and longer, and something once a week that's maybe somewhere in the middle. So I think as far as intensity goes, just varying that and training your body to do a variety of things can be helpful too. So I think at the Beauty of Better, we're trying to encourage you to look at where you're at right now and pick something that is challenging for you, right? It might not be challenging for your neighbor or your best friend, but that's okay. That really doesn't matter. We want you to pick something that's challenging for you, and really pay attention to your heart rate while you're doing that and see how much it goes up, see how long it takes to come back down, and then adjust from there. So if you want it to go up higher, maybe we need to work a little bit harder. If we want it to go for longer, maybe we keep our heart rate a little bit lower. So we just want to encourage you to pay attention to that and just really start doing something that's a little bit more than what you're doing right now. And we encourage you in that, and we're excited for you to try it, and hope that if you need more direction and help from us in that in the future, that you always feel free to reach out and ask, and we will be providing some resources for that in our subscriptions as well. So on that note, go monitor your heart rate and get your body moving. All right, we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for listening to the Beauty of Better podcast.
If you liked today's episode, don't forget to subscribe.
Connect with our community and check out other resources on our website at beautyofbetter.com.
We hope this podcast helped you take the next small step to find the beauty in becoming better.